single bike mounted upon a car alternator, which in turn powered a small projector, throwing an experimental silent short film onto a tiny screen at the Llama Tree Festival in Dorset. If you could do that with one bike, what could you do with 10? With the help of a company called Magnificent Revolutions, we managed to rig up a powerful projector to an entire bank of bikes, all of which chugged away at full power for the length of time it took Beggars of Life to play to 350 people, while the Dodge brothers provided acoustic skiffle accompaniment throughout. The bikes were far from silent, but somehow the whirring, clunking sound of the wheels seemed to replicate the sound of an old projector, providing an authentically wheezing backdrop to a live musical score that involved all manner of banging, crashing, bluegrass banjo and gob iron wailing. At the end of the screening, a gaunt-faced gentleman with piercing eyes and strangely distinctive teeth, and apparently wearing a tea cosy on his head, came up and shook our hands and told us that he couldn't remember the last time he'd enjoyed himself so much at the cinema. It was Richard O'Brien, creator of the Rocky Horror Show, a hero of mine. For a moment, my life felt strangely complete. So yes, I do have a powerful hankering for the days when films were performed rather than just screened, and directors understood that film, unlike theatre, is first and foremost a visual medium in which dialogue is not the driving force. Another of my personal heroes, Mike Figgis, once spoke passionately to me about how the advent of sound and the introduction of recorded speech had, ironically, brought to an end the universal language that had once been a defining factor of pure cinema. Figgis recalled how immigrants arriving in America from Europe were first processed at Ellis Island, where a silent film screening, with live musical accompaniment — silent film was never silent — would be used to explain to them the wonders of the new world that awaited. The film would have neither recorded sound, obviously, nor intertitles. Illiteracy and language barriers would have rendered them useless. But somehow the images conveyed enough information to orientate the newcomers and prepare them for what might otherwise have been an intolerable culture shock. For Figgis, the moment film became a verbal rather than a visual and musical experience, it also became a slave to the boundaries of language. Its scope no longer universal, but national, perhaps even regional. To be sure, the director was not decrying the use of recorded sound, with which he has experimented throughout his career, most notably on the bizarre Lynchian rumblings that accompany his best and most underrated movie, Liebestraum. But he understood that whatever else may have been gained, something had also been lost when dialogue became the primary ingredient of cinematic exposition. Australian director Peter Weir said something similar when I interviewed him on stage at BAFTA in 2010 on behalf of the David Lean Foundation. Recounting the difficulties he had experienced dealing with certain Hollywood executives, Weir remarked in an offhand way that their problem is that they don't read the script. Oh, they read the dialogue, but that's all they read. Weir went on to explain that when signing on to direct Witness, he had made a point of making the executives listen to him tell the story of the film, going on to describe in detail the opening shots, which depict an apparently ancient community living amidst the modern world. There wasn't a single word of dialogue in his description, but the essence of the film was encapsulated in the verbal pictures he drew for them. By the time he signed the contract, he was confident that they were all seeing the same film, as distinct from simply hearing the same words. All of which is a very roundabout way of saying that I not only accept, but actively embrace accusations that I have an accentuated fondness for the early forms of cinema, for which many of my most shrill opponents have neither the time nor the patience, nor indeed the intelligence, wit and integrity. Screw 'em, I say it's their loss. But as to my aversion to 3D being comparable with a desire to wipe sound and colour from the filmmaker's palette, that is sheer corporate ass-licking balderdash. 3D is nothing like sound or colour. You know it, I know it, everybody knows it. And for proof, one needs look no further than the public's willingness to embrace sound and colour, in stark comparison to their long-standing resistance to 3D. Look at the evidence. Experiments with sound cinema were being carried out at the turn of the century, with picture synchronization being the greatest hurdle. By the 1920s, Warner Brothers was using the Vitaphone system to provide oral accompaniment to a string of short features, and in 1927 the jazz singer put sound features on the map. By 1929, silent cinema was as good as dead in Hollywood, although in some territories, such as China and Japan, silent and sound cinema coexisted throughout the 30s. But by the 40s, even the films produced in the world's poorest economies were being made with sound, without which they were deemed internationally unsaleable. Nowadays we have surround sound in our homes and wouldn't settle for anything less at the pictures, although the all-but-silent French film The Artist has just become a huge hit in Cannes. As for colour, Thomas Edison was hand-painting prints of Annabelle Moore dancing for his kinetoscope attractions as early as 1894, while George Méliès reportedly employed 20 or so women in Montreuil to hand-paint frames from A Trip to the Moon with production line efficiency. In 1905, Pathé Frères introduced a stencil colour process, while film tinting continued to be popular throughout the 20s and 30s and was even used as late as 1951 for the sci-fi feature Lost Continent. Meanwhile, three-strip Technicolor, which had become popular in the 30s, heralded the arrival of full-colour cinema, which would coexist with black and white features for decades before effectively becoming industry standard in the 60s. By the early 70s, no one was making monochrome features as a matter of course, only as a matter of design. Unless specified otherwise, all movies were in colour. The same is true of widescreen cinema in all its various forms. Today, films shot in the squarer ratio of 1:33 have become rare enough to draw complaints when correctly projected in cinemas, such as Andrea Arnold's critically acclaimed feature Fish Tank or Kelly Reichardt's Meek's Cutoff, both of which sent patrons scurrying to the projection booth claiming that the sides of the picture were missing. Even TV programmes, once the last bastion of old-school 4:3 Academy framing, are now standardly shot and broadcast in 16:9, or, in cinema terms, 1:77:1. In short, widescreen has become normal screen, with screen dimensions ranging from 185:1 to 239:1 being what everyone expects from the movies. Crucially, all these innovations, sound, colour, scope, were accepted almost at once by the movie-going public, despite the technical teething problems that each encountered. Early soundtracks were scratchy, distorted, and often out of sync. Colour was patchy, irregular, and unreliably changeable. Widescreen projection was costly, cumbersome, and, in its early multiple projector incarnations, given to break down at regular intervals. Yet despite these manifest failings, the public never expressed enough disenchantment or lack of interest for the studios simply to give up or move on to the next big thing. On the contrary, the progress of all three formats has been more or less a continuum, a steady rise in public acceptance and expectation, halted only by the failure of technology to come up with the goods at an affordable price. Oh, there were long periods during the early silent era when filmmakers who had experimented with sound decided that the process of matching images with dialogue was simply more trouble than it was worth. But as soon as reliably synchronized sound and film became both possible and practical, audiences took to it with alacrity. At no point did they decide that actually they weren't that interested in this new novelty after all, or realise that another advancement altogether was the true way forward. In this respect, 3D is unique. Despite being as old as film itself, stereoscopic cinema has been rejected by audiences and superseded by competing revolutionary formats on at least 3 separate occasions in the same century. Unlike colour, sound or scope, its driving force has always been industry need rather than consumer demand. Whereas other systems have had to prove their worth in cash terms from the get-go, 3D has been thrust, like the lion in Buona Devil, into the laps of moviegoers by studios desperate for audiences to embrace the format whatever the cost. Like Microsoft attempting to ram their latest version of Word down our throats when most of us were happy with the old one, the inevitable move toward a stereoscopic future has been pushed from the rear rather than led from the front, foisted upon consumers who have been told what to want and then forced to pay for something they never asked for in the first place. You want proof? Okay, here's proof. Clash of the Titans. Not the 1981 Ray Harryhausen production, which, to be honest, was never the maestro's finest work, and in which, despite the title, Titans never do actually clash. No, I'm talking about the aforementioned 2010 Louis Leterrier remake starring Avatar graduate Sam Worthington, whose previous success has a lot to answer for. As we have already observed, James Cameron's 3D spectacular took just shy of $2.8 billion at the worldwide box office, making the director the proud helmsman of the 2 biggest money-making films of all time, neither of which had been burdened by a half-decent script. In the wake of Avatar's bum-numbing stereoscopic success, every half-witted Hollywood producer without an original thought in their coke-addled heads decided that 3D was a cash cow and all future products must be forced to conform to this gluttonous economic paradigm forthwith. Never mind the fact that Cameron had spent years gazing at his own navel trying to figure out how to make a game-changing movie in a medium which no one had liked for almost a century. Say what you like about Avatar, that it's infantile, overlong, shamelessly derivative, wildly patronising and laughably lacking in humour from start to finish, which it is, at least its creator believed in the technological innovations apparently required to bring the damn thing to the screen. According to an interview in Entertainment Weekly, he also believed that the Hurt Locker would have been improved by being in 3D. Never mind the fact that the film looks a million times better in 2D, clearer, brighter, sharper, or that Pandora is a far more immersive world when not viewed through the alienating annoyance of polarised lenses that make everything seem dark, dingy and dismally diminutive. At least Cameron thought he was doing the right thing, like Tony Blair deciding to invade Iraq, only with less tragic results. In 2010, punters wishing to see Clash of the Titans, more fool them, were asked to stump up a surplus charge in order to pay for the 3D glasses that would enable them to experience the miracle of stereoscopy which made the movie such an allegedly unmissable experience. Unfortunately, the film, which had gone into production long before Avatar broke box office records, had, as noted previously, been designed and shot in plain old 2D, in which format the director had originally intended it to be shown. However, in the wake of Avatar's game-changing success, it was declared that movies had to be in 3D in order to be hits. So, Clash of the Titans was handed over to a bunch of computer nerds who set about digitally reconfiguring the images to impose a clumsy illusion of stereoscopy upon a picture which was never intended to be anything but monoscopic. To achieve this retrofitted 3D effect, the techies took a parallax hammer to the background footage, imposing an eyeball-twisting illusion of depth that caused the unfazed foreground images to appear flat but nearer. They then repeated this trick in reverse, negative parallax, on some of the pointier foreground images, making them appear even nearer and even flatter. The result was not a fully rounded 3D experience, it just looked like a bunch of flat things happening on opposing planes of flatness. In the business, this apparently common phenomenon is referred to as the cardboard cutout effect, meaning that the cast of Clash of the Titans were not just wooden, but cardboard. Thanks for that. A similar process was applied to equally dismal effect on Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland, producing results so piss-poor that 3D evangelist James Cameron took to the press to badmouth the kind of slapdash conversion processes that were giving 3D cinema a bad name. Even Michael Bay, the reigning champion of artistically bankrupt blockbuster cinema and latter-day advocate of real 3D, announced that he was not sold right now on the conversion process, which is rather like Max Clifford declaring that he's worried about certain forms of press coverage lowering the general tone of news reporting. In the case of Clash of the Titans, the clear consensus was that the retrofitted 3D had damaged rather than enhanced the movie, an opinion shared even by those who made the film. Although initially obliged to say only positive things, Sam Worthington later ruefully admitted that, "I think we kinda let some people down." You think? Leterrier was more forthright, telling the Hollywood Reporter, "I was saying to them, don't make it so much like a Viewmaster, so puffed up. It was not my intention to do it in 3D. It was not my decision to convert it in 3D. Conversions, they all look like this. Alice in Wonderland looked like this. The technology was not ready." If you've seen Clash of the Titans, both in theatres and on 2D Blu-ray disc, which I have because that's my job, you'll realise just how not ready the technology really was, and just what a mess the conversion made of an otherwise merely bland fantasy remake. The film may not be much good in pristine 2D, but it's a hell of a lot better, brighter, clearer, more focused than it was in a screwed-up 3D conversion. Yet even devoted fans of Louis Leterrier and his explosive oeuvre, I have an ongoing weakness for his transporter movies, which, for me, are essentially homoerotic male wrestling pics posing as action-adventures, were bullied into watching Clash in a format for which it was neither designed nor intended. Worse still, they were made to pay for the privilege. Just think about that. Hollywood execs take a vaguely watchable film, make it all but unwatchable, and then ask you to pick up the check. Smile and wave, boys. Smile and wave. In many ways, the depressing case of Clash of the Titans is